In this video, I want to talk about get-rich-quick schemes. So let me go to the Wikipedia page of this subject. And it says a get-rich-quick scheme is a plan to obtain high rates of return for a small investment. The term get-rich-quick has been used to describe shady investments since at least the early 20th century. Now, this does not mean that there was no such thing as a get-rich-quick scheme before the early 20th century. It's only that since the early 20th century, this practice became so obvious that people gave it a label. And you can read the page for yourself. And remember, when the 19th century occurred, and later 20th century, there was a lot of change in infrastructure and industry. So there were scammers that wanted to trick people into giving them their money. For example, when railroads were being built throughout Europe, there were scammers telling commoners that they could get a high return if they invested in a railway project. But those scammers were not involved in railway projects at all. He just pretended to be. And that's how a lot of people were fooled. And such things happen till this day, not with railroad companies, but with other things. Now, a get-rich-quick scheme, often you recognize it instantly because it sounds too good to be true. For example, someone tells you that you can earn 500 euros a day from home by using your computer. And you think, what? 500 euros a day? For doing what? You know that this world is not that benevolent. You know that this world is operating in selfishness, in self-centeredness. You know that most people have a narcissistic attitude. Not that most people are narcissists, but they have a narcissistic attitude. That's how common people are. So you know very well that people likely won't give you things for free. It can happen that you receive something for free, but to receive something for free regularly, your alarm goes off. You sense that something is behind it. And most of the time, you're right, there is something behind it. Either it's fake, so it's not true, or it may be true, but it's a trap. You may be used by criminals for money laundering. Look, this get-rich-quick scheme is a common way for demons to operate. A get-rich-quick scheme, you can recognize it quickly, often instantly. But why do people fall for get-rich-quick schemes? Let's talk about that. People fall for get-rich-quick schemes because they want a way out of a situation without having to face the situation. Okay, let me repeat that because it's very important. People fall for get-rich-quick schemes because they want to get rid of a situation, or they want to get out of a situation without facing the situation. So let me give an example. Let's say someone, okay, this doesn't relate directly to get-rich-quick schemes, but let's say someone is in a supermarket and suddenly someone tells them to be quiet. And then the individual looks around and he sees that there's an armed robbery going on. 4 men enter the supermarket, they have machine guns, and they want to get money. So everyone in the supermarket stands still because somebody wants to get shot. This is a very dumb move. Because a shooter is just a human being, so he cannot focus on too many people at the same time. So when a shooter enters a place and people begin to move like crazy, they can't focus well anymore. Even if they shoot, they'll likely shoot in a very bad way, that maybe someone's leg is hurt, but it's very hard to kill so many people with a gun if they are moving quickly. So people freeze in a situation. By freezing, they are making it very easy for the perpetrators to harm them. Okay? I just want to point that out. But let's say you're in this situation. You didn't provoke the situation. You didn't brought it on yourself. It just happened. Okay? So you're in a supermarket and suddenly there are 4 guys with guns over there. You can get out of the situation. There is a way for you to escape. But you can't just walk to the front door and leave, because the guys with the guns They will see you and they'll tell you, hold up, where are you going? So for you to get out of the situation, you will have to be wise as a serpent and harmless as a dove. So you must, let me say this, you have to distract the perpetrators so that you can leave the supermarket without them noticing it. So anyone that tells you, just walk out of the supermarket, throw it behind you, they are very delusional. In such a situation, you can't just walk out just like that. It's not going to work. That is the reason why people fall for get-rich-quick schemes. They want to avoid something without facing the thing they want to avoid. It's not going to work. But there is another type of scheme, or better said scam, that people fall for. Far more than get-rich-quick schemes. And that's the scam of having an easy existence without any resistance. Or let me say it in another way. Common people, they expect change without a challenge. I said it. That's the bigger scam that people fall for. Get-rich-quick schemes, you can see it easily. Because often the things they promise are so outrageous that you think this can't be true. But when it comes to those self-help gurus, they promise you change without a challenge. And this is what most people fall for all the time. I want you to read this article. You can look it up for yourself, because I'm not going to read it all for you now. Now, this article is about a World War II bomb that was found in Hong Kong. It was allegedly dropped there by the United States during the Second World War. And these were the type of bombs they used to drop or hide in enemy territory at the time. And later, during the Vietnam War, there were many bombs dropped in Vietnam and also in Cambodia. So in mainland Southeast Asia that happened. So those things happened. But after the Vietnam War, did the danger stop? No. Recently, there was another World War II bomb found in Europe somewhere. And how long ago is the Second World War? 75 years, almost. So you mean to tell me that after almost a century, or 3/4 of a century, the danger of the Second World War is still around? Yes, it's still around. Do we still have Nazis invading France? No. Do we still have Jews being deported? No. But does it mean that the danger of the Second World War has ended? No. The effects or the after effects of the Second World War are still going on. The same with the Vietnam War. And about the situation in Vietnam, someone from the government said that it would take around 3 centuries to remove all the bombs that were dropped over there. Now, I don't know if those 3 centuries or 300 years is accurate. It's just an estimate. So probably it's less. Maybe, I'd rather think maybe 100 years or 80 years. Anyway, it's clear it's going to take a while before all the remains, or better said, all the dangers of the Vietnam War are removed. For example, let's say that someone purchases a house, okay? There's a big garden with the property. And one day, there's an explosion in the backyard. One of the children has to go to the hospital and the child dies. And this is a big tragedy in the neighborhood. But then, the father of the dead child goes into the history of the area and he finds out that during the Second World War, that place was a militarized zone. And then after the war, they sold the area to a real estate office, and they constructed blocks with apartments and villas, so people began to live there. But then the father also found out that the local authorities back then knew that there were mines and other bombs hidden in the ground, but they never dealt with it. So then the father thought, hold on a minute, how can it be that there is a war, the war ends, but you don't remove the after effects of the war? In this case, the mines and the bombs were dropped all over the place. So the father realized that even though that war was over decades ago, the after effects are still haunting the place. And he experienced one of those after effects in the form of his child dying due to a hidden bomb that was under the soil of his property. So the authorities back then were not realistic. They just realized, okay, this war happened, but it's going to take decades to recover from this and to heal from this collectively. Now, I'm not making this video talk about the Second World War, nor about bombs from the Second World War. It's not even about get-rich-quick schemes. I've used these two subjects to lead to the following. Too many believers, because I'm talking to believers in this video, too many believers expect change without a challenge. And that is why Satan has many believers trapped in darkness. When it comes to a get-rich-quick scheme, you can see, or you can just listen and you will hear that the story doesn't add up. When it comes to things like war, you know that it's going to take a while before the after effects are gone or they're dealt with. Why is it that believers think that they can get deliverance without a fight? How is it that believers seriously think that in this world that's set against Christ, in this world where people don't want to be free, in this world where people don't want to be held accountable, where people hate justice, how can believers expect that in a world like this, they can be anointed, blessed, and delivered without facing a fight by those who don't want to be free? Let me explain like this, okay? Let's say, I'm going to give a parable now. Let's say that you have this landlord that passes away and there's inheritance. But none of the descendants come to pick up the inheritance. There's one descendant of his who is entitled to the inheritance, but he has to respond within 20 years after the death of the landlord. Now, this descendant is, she's a lady. She's 20 years old. She just finished college and she's working in an office. She finds out that she is entitled to 20 million euros. And she is also entitled to multiple assets belonging to big corporations, because her grandfather was involved in investments. At the time that the grandfather invested, when he was in his early 20s, the assets weren't worth that much. But now those corporations merged with other corporations and those assets are worth hundreds of thousands of euros in revenue each year. So not only is she entitled to 20 million euros, she's also entitled to around 300,000 euros a year due to the assets. Now, what's going to happen if this young lady goes to the notary officer and she takes the inheritance? What do you think is going to happen? She will now walk in all that abundance of finances. She will purchase her own house. She will go on traveling. She will do the things she never could because she didn't have the money for it. So you would think, okay, happy for her. Look at the bigger picture. She didn't have much options. That's why she had to get a job. Because she had no rich parents, she had no rich boyfriend, nor a wealthy husband. She just had a job. And people that know her as that chick with a job. That's it. So they know that she can't do much because she doesn't have much money. Let's say that those people find out that she's entitled to millions of euros. And those people know that once she receives the inheritance, she'll be unstoppable. Do you seriously think those people are going to be happy for her? No. They're going to ask, why her? Well, she's not that special. Why does she suddenly get such a big advantage, such a huge advantage? Then they will try to keep her away from knowing she's entitled to the money. And if that doesn't work and she receives the money nevertheless, they will now try to destroy her reputation through smear campaigns to hinder her from using the abundance she has. So she got good news that she was entitled to an inheritance of 20 million euros. But she didn't realize that there would be a fight coming to her once she received it. So let me say it like this. Many believers think that the fight happens when you're about to be delivered or when you are about to receive a blessing. That's not the case. The fight often comes after you've received what you were longing for. It's after your prayers are answered, after the fight comes. Because when you're about to receive something and you don't have it yet, people think, oh, you're probably never going to get it. And once you have it, others will be affected by what you have. It doesn't have to be millions of euros. The moment you receive what you have, it will affect others. And others have no choice in being affected. They just have to find a way to deal with that effect on them in a proper way. And a lot of people are going to take offense. They're going to become upset because they're affected by what you've received. And you're the one that received it, not them, so they don't have any control on it. So, you walking in prosperity, it will trigger hatred and violence against you. So there is no such thing as a change without a challenge. Christ said to believers, in the world ye shall have tribulation. But he said, be of good cheer, because I've overcome the world. So Christ is very plain in it. You will encounter violence against you when you walk by faith. That's why Christ gave us his teachings to prepare us so that we would anticipate what's coming against us, to endure and overcome things victoriously to come against us. Yet you have many believers, they live in this fairy tale land where they want positive change, good change to happen to them without any challenge. That does not exist. It does not. When you have a demonic contract, things happen for you and there is no challenge because the demons keep negative people in check on your behalf. Not that there is no resistance, but resistance is smitten down by the evil spirits themselves. However, whatever you receive based on the terms of the demonic contract will expire. And when it expires, it's your doom. Okay? But too often we see people who've made demonic pacts. We see them, but we only look at the short-term gain they have. We don't look at the bigger picture. We don't put it in context and see that that short-term gain means their long-term destruction. Believers go through tribulation because the world doesn't want them to walk in Christ's strength, because they can't control Christ, nor Christ's strength. Think about this. you can't discard a believer. If you are dealing with an employee, you can fire him or fire her. If you're at a job and you can stand the boss, you can get another job if there are more jobs available. So worldly people can discard other worldly people. But when you discard a believer, it will backfire. Because the believer can just shake off that rejection from him, and from her, and you're the one left with attention. So you can't discard a believer. You can't control a believer. The only hope you have is for the believer not to be aware of the strength of Christ is available unto them, so that you can now keep them in a state of anxiety, and in this state of anxiety, you can exploit the believer. But once a believer knows who they are in Christ and you walk by faith, you cannot control them and you cannot discard them. And this is something the world doesn't want to face. So anytime a believer walks by faith, there will be retaliation against that believer. So believers should not fall for this change without a challenge scam that Satan offers to worldly people. Because worldly people fall for this all the time. Why do you think elections work? Why do you think that worldly people keep going to those politicians to vote on them? Why do people keep voting even when it becomes obvious that nothing really changes? They go voting because they expect a change without a challenge. They expect that if they vote, for example, for Donald Trump, and that's what a lot of people expect, if they vote for Donald Trump, there's going to be a change that's not going to affect them. Or they think if you vote for this party, there's going to be improvement, but it's not going to be any challenge against it. It's a short-sighted way of thinking that keeps people trapped in those hoaxes. This is also why many women and men, because domestic violence also happens to men, that's why a lot of people remain trapped in domestic violence situations that any outsider would have gotten out instantly. Why? Because they hope that there will be a change without a challenge. Even when it becomes obvious that there is no change in that domestic violence situation because the perpetrator doesn't want to repent, the perpetrator only becomes worse, people often don't leave because leave means that a change needs to happen on the inside. People need to let go of the relationship. But letting go of the relationship now means you need to face the fact that you're not going to get back the time you spent in the relationship, that all the investments in the relationship is not going to be worthwhile. It simply means you need to face those losses and move on. So there's going to be a challenge after you've left the perpetrator, but this is a challenge you need to embrace and you need to face. But a lot of people that are stuck in violent or dangerous situations, they want an escape without having to escape. They want a change without a challenge, and it's not going to happen. And believers should be very realistic about this. There is no change without a challenge. Write it down. There is no change without a challenge. Okay? Look, I don't know what you're going through. I don't even have to know. What I want you to understand is that there's no change without a challenge. So stop looking for one. I agree with Christ.